11:35 p.m. found the laptop screen illuminated, auto-playing a video from Vacation Photos 2019. My wife's voice echoed in my home office, sounding intimate and unsettling. "Keep going," she said. Then appeared Wyatt Caldwell, a friend since the 7th grade, a groomsman at my wedding, shown intimately touching my spouse on-screen as if it was his property. I didn't fling the laptop, shout, or disturb the house. Instead, I remained rooted, absorbing the footage for 11 minutes, replaying it twice under the cool glow of that screen. Somewhere in the second round, a hush descended on me, deep and ominous. The name Rowan Voss belongs to a 40-year-old man who oversees a commercial contracting firm in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I wish you comprehend that before hearing what came next. I'm not one prone to outbursts of anger. For 2 decades, I worked at hazardous job sites where a single mistake could prove fatal, teaching me to remain calm amidst chaos and think strategically before speaking. When I stumbled upon that video, I didn't approach my wife in the kitchen during midnight hours. I didn't phone Wyatt in a fit of rage. Instead, I closed the laptop and climbed into bed beside the woman who had been deceiving me, perhaps for an extended period. 6 days later, we were hosting Thanksgiving dinner. Her parents, his wife, and my mother were all expected to attend. It was then that I made a decisive plan about how this situation would conclude. Prior to that fateful Tuesday in November, I believed I led a satisfying life, albeit not perfect, as nobody's is. I am Rowan Voss, owner of Voss Builders, a commercial contracting company based out of an Amnicola highway warehouse in Chattanooga. We specialize in retail build-outs, restaurant renovations, and the occasional warehouse conversion. For 14 years, I transformed a lone truck and borrowed tools into a thriving company that now employs 22 individuals, securing a contract for office space renovation in downtown Chattanooga, near the aquarium. While I may not meet the wealth standards of Chicago or New York, my accomplishments here are significant. With the house I built for my wife in Hickson, and the 2 trucks parked in our driveway, and our son entering his junior year at Hickson High, I have achieved something I am proud of. My partner, Gemma, aged 42, works as a pediatric occupational therapist at a clinic close to Kai Memorial. Over 16 years of marriage, I would confidently tell anyone who inquired that she is the most reliable and trustworthy person I've ever encountered. We met when I was 23, engaged in framing work for her parents' lake house renovation out near Soddy Daisy, where she would bring sandwiches to the crew on Saturdays. For 3 decades, Bennett Larkin, Gemma's father, managed a compact HVAC service vehicle business before retiring, and he appreciated me from the get-go due to my habit of arriving ahead of schedule and staying beyond the usual hours. Gemma's mom, Pauline, would often tease that she arranged our union before Gemma had a clue about it. Wyatt Caldwell, however, I had known for a longer duration than I had known Gemma. We resided in the same neighborhood off Hickson Pike, 2 streets apart, and shared junior league baseball experiences since childhood. At 16, we obtained our first beers together utilizing his older cousin's ID behind Food City. When Voss Builders was established, Wyatt was the initial person I contacted. Although he never worked under me, he now deals commercial insurance with his downtown clientele. He aided in transferring every piece of equipment into the first warehouse. He served as the best man at my wedding. He is Body's godfather, who is currently 16 and remains unaware of this fact, and I hope it stays that way for a considerable period. 4 years ago, Wyatt wed Sloan, a nurse at Erlanger who was sweet, tranquil, and had the uncanny ability to remember birthdays without prompting. I held a soft spot for Sloan. I held more than just a fondness for her, which made the ordeal of that video all the more devastating as it wasn't simply a breach of trust towards me. It was also a betrayal of her, being seated at her own dinner table believing in her husband's honesty. Let me guide you through that Tuesday, as I have revisited it countless times in my mind, searching for any indication, any sign, something I should have recognized earlier. The day commenced ordinarily. As usual, I rose at 5:30, had coffee from the blue mug Body crafted me during freshman year shop class, left by 6:15 to link up with my team at a job site off Brainerd Road, where we were renovating an antiquated furniture store for a new urgent care clinic. Gemma was engrossed in patient appointments all day. Body had football conditioning post-school. Nothing about that Tuesday felt amiss. 7:30 found me home, sharing dinner with Gemma. She prepared her signature turkey chili for the season's chill, a recipe passed down from her mom. We conversed about ordinary topics: cleaning gutters before the holiday, bodies, grades, and chemistry possibly requiring a tutor, the type of chatter that unassumingly bolsters daily life. Gemma retired to bed early, mentioning a headache. I retreated to my home office to complete a client's bid for a strip mall renovation near Hamilton Place. Since my laptop had been malfunctioning with video call freezes, I was using Gemma's for stable connections. I needed to access a PDF of architectural drawings, which I knew she'd saved to her desktop several weeks ago when assisting me in organizing files, as I struggled to keep my digital filing system in order. I accessed her laptop instead of locating my usual folder, but found an unrecognized one titled Vacation Photos 2019 prominently displayed on the desktop. This seemed peculiar to me right away, as we hadn't gone on a vacation in 2019. Body was preoccupied with his baseball tournament that summer, and the years before and after were marked by our trip to the Smokies in 2018 and the lockdown of 2020. There was no vacation in 2019. I almost left it untouched. I feel it's important to disclose that. I considered it an old folder from her single days, a relic surviving numerous computer switches. However, an innate sense, similar to the one that has safeguarded me on construction sites for 20 years, urged me to open it. Inside were 4 video files devoid of any photos. This should have been my second hint that Vacation Photos was a deceptive label. The file names read like IMG 4471 and IMG 4502. A phone's generic naming of a video implied they were downloaded or transferred instead of recorded properly on a camera. I clicked one without fully comprehending, and then her voice, distinctive yet haunting, echoed from the laptop speakers, uttering phrases I can't erase. The setting was a hotel room. I recognized the bedspread, the specific taupe shade, and the headboard design because Voss Builders had renovated that exact hotel, the Reed House downtown, specifically the 4th-floor suites, 2 years prior. I was intimately familiar with this room as I had reviewed the punch list personally. My wife was in a bed I helped refurbish, with a man I knew since I was 11 years old, and the date stamp on the video showed August of that year. 3 months earlier, not 2019, 3 months. I remained seated in the office chair for what seemed like an extended period. Though I lacked a completed engineering degree from UT Chattanooga due to leaving to establish my business, my mind is inherently structured as an engineer, pondering systems, sequences, and consequences. As my fingers grew numb and a weight pressed upon my chest, another part of my brain began computations. 4 videos were involved, spaced according to the file name's implications, indicating this wasn't a solitary incident stemming from excess wine at a conference. Instead, it was a pattern. It was a relationship that ran concurrently with my marriage, orchestrated by individuals who had spent 16 years sharing Thanksgivings, Bodie's birthdays, and Sunday dinners at my mother's house. I scrutinized all 4 videos. I won't feign ignorance about this, as I believe the candor is crucial for this narrative. I needed to comprehend the extent of the situation before making a decision on how to proceed. The earliest discovery was in May, while the latest was in October, only 3 weeks prior to that fateful Tuesday evening. Spanning at least 6 months, an affair occurred between my wife and my closest friend, taking place within a hotel room I personally constructed. After midnight, I closed the laptop and did not disturb Gemma or contact Wyatt. Instead, I spent the night in the office darkness, wishing to disclose the truth of my emotions, as it wasn't solely rage that coursed through me, but also a peculiar sense of clarity. 2 decades of managing construction sites has taught me that impulsive actions during crises are detrimental. When faced with a burning building, one does not rush inside. First, you evaluate, locate the exits, and determine everyone's whereabouts before taking action. That night, I approached it as if assessing a structural failure that needed to be mapped before repairs could begin. Though I did not sleep soundly, my mind was focused on understanding the situation rather than resting. Next to Gemma, who slept peacefully, as if all was well with the world, I gazed at the ceiling, constructing a plan in my mind, much like designing a renovation schedule. By 4 a.m., I had my strategy clear, what I would do and when I would execute it. In 6 days, on Thanksgiving, my house would be bustling with life. Gemma's parents, Bennett and Pauline, hailing from their lakeside residence, would arrive. My mother, Deborah, would make her way over from her condo in East Brainerd, a place I had helped her move into after my father passed away 4 years prior. Wyatt and Sloane, too, would be present, as they always were. For 14 years, we've celebrated Thanksgiving together, with Wyatt carving the turkey beside me at the counter, engaged in our annual Tennessee football debate, while Sloane and Gemma shared laughter over the green bean casserole in the kitchen. Once a year, all the significant individuals in my life, along with those who deceived me unknowingly, were to gather at the same table. I'm not a person who seeks drama. I dislike shouting. I've terminated employees peacefully in my truck instead of in front of a team, believing that dignity should be maintained even when delivering unfavorable news, even when someone deserves less than dignity. However, I also recognize a truth about myself that took me 4 decades to grasp fully. When pushed past my limits of silent endurance, I don't erupt, I construct. In 6 days, I plan to create the most calculated, destructive, indisputable confrontation of my existence without uttering a single raised word. The following morning, I went about my work as usual, concealing the turmoil within. Pause for a moment and contemplate this as it clarifies who I am. I drove to the Brainerd Road site. Walked the construction team through today's plan. Received a call from an urgent care client regarding tile choices. Simultaneously, another part of my mind executed a separate task. During my lunch break, in my vehicle parked on the gravel lot behind the work site, I contacted Garrison Prout, a former investigator I've utilized twice to verify subcontractors with past issues. Over lunch at his office above a barbershop on McCallie Avenue that Wednesday, I shared 4 videos stored in my phone with him, stating, "I don't need you to corroborate what I already suspect. I require you to ascertain duration, frequency, and if there are any additional facts concealed." Garrison, a middle-aged man with a tired, understanding demeanor from decades of witnessing human turmoil, glanced at the screen for approximately 10 seconds before delicately placing the phone. "I apologize, Rowan," he said then, being professional rather than a sympathetic friend. He got straight to the point. "Allow me 4 days. I'll obtain hotel records, access credit card transactions if possible, and phone records if your wife's name is listed on a joint account. I will construct a comprehensive timeline for you." I informed him I had until Thanksgiving. He assured me that would be sufficient time. I paid him in cash as usual, and drove back to the work site as if I had merely stepped out for lunch. Over the subsequent days, I morphed into a distinct individual within my own home, one whom Gemma failed to perceive due to my adept acting skills when the situation demanded it. I returned home at the usual hours. I dined at the regular table. I inquired about her day, and she shared stories of a child with motor delays, to which I responded appropriately, unbeknownst to me that she may have been exchanging texts with Wyatt beneath the table during some part of that same week. I shared her bed. I kissed her goodbye each morning. Every action I took was genuine in its execution, yet deceptive because the man enacting them had emotionally departed from our marriage the instant the video began playing. Garrison phoned me back on Saturday morning, 2 days before Thanksgiving. I encountered him at a Waffle House situated off Shallowford Road, hidden from where Gemma or any of my associates might identify me. He placed a manila folder on the table between the syrup dispenser and napkin holder, as if presenting proof in a courtroom, which indeed he was. The chronology was graver than I'd subconsciously anticipated. The affair didn't initiate in May, as I assumed from the video timestamps, but in February, spanning 9 months. It started based on phone records Garrison obtained through unspecified channels, and I chose not to delve deeper into his methods, nor did I press for information about them. This affair commenced a week after Wyatt and Sloane had organized a small dinner gathering. Gemma had stayed behind to assist with the cleanup while I took Bodie home early due to his curfew for a tournament the following day. 9 months. 41 documented instances of contact outside the usual social interactions. Hotel stays included. An uncommon number of client lunches on Gemma's schedule were not associated with any actual clients at her clinic. Recovered voice memos from Wyatt that a competent forensic pull managed to salvage. I sat in that booth, sipping black coffee and saying little as Garrison spoke, since I was calculating again. The same rational thinking that had carried me through the first sleepless night. 9 months meant this wasn't an instance of weakness. This was a second life. This was my best friend and wife concealing something covertly while standing beside me at my son's football games, while sitting opposite me during Sunday dinners, while Wyatt patted me on the shoulder at our company's 10th anniversary party last spring, and publicly declared that I was the most devoted son of a gun he'd ever known. Garrison added one more detail, pushing a single printed page towards me. The screenshot dated around 3 weeks back depicted a text message from Wyatt to Gemma. Unaware was Rowan. Post that final video, they were contemplating how to proceed, juggling holiday plans while mapping out future actions. Sloane, too, couldn't continue with the deception. I reread that line 4 times. We just have to get through the holidays. Their intent was clear: to maintain a facade of normalcy during Thanksgiving, enjoying my mother's cooking, watching Body flaunt his football highlights, and concealing their plot to end 2 marriages at their convenience. This decision was finalized for me. If they desired another display of normality, I decided to stage an unforgettable performance. The weekend was spent in constructing what I named the presentation. As a contractor, it's fitting. I'm skilled at creating unassailable documentation, devoid of debate, as ambiguity is not tolerated in my line of work. It results in ridicule during disputes. However, clarity prevails, with a specific timeline containing dates, proof, and supporting documents. I edited the 4 videos to ensure they were less graphic for my mother's and Gemma's parents' sensitive eyes. My intention was not to embarrass or humiliate Gemma in an exploitative or pornographic manner, but to present the truth transparently, conclusively, without room for doubt. I reduced each video to 10-15 seconds, a duration sufficient to depict the setting, show both individuals clearly, display the date stamp, and nothing more. Arranged damaging text messages in a slideshow, highlighted the incriminating ones such as "Getting Through the Holidays," and created a straightforward timeline graphic titled February to November. My large television, utilized for football on Sundays and Bodhi's video games, is connected to an HDMI switch and Apple TV in the living room. Coincidentally, this screen has been used annually by Gemma's family to watch the National Dog Show every Thanksgiving morning before dinner, a tradition Pauline fiercely upholds. Familiar with directing a laptop into this setup due to frequent use during March Madness parties, I effortlessly connected it on Thanksgiving morning, a crisp and clear Tennessee autumn day. Something unusual happened that morning when I woke up early as usual. A sense of tranquility enveloped me, not the tranquility born from acceptance, but the tranquility stemming from the thoroughness of constructing something so precisely that I have utter faith in it. This feeling mirrors my composure while surveying a completed project on the eve of a client's inspection, assured every detail has been scrutinized meticulously. By 8, Gemma was up and about, navigating the kitchen with the familiar grace of a hostess who had orchestrated this feast a dozen times before. She withdrew the turkey to let it reach room temperature, and initiated the cornbread for the dressing her mother taught her to prepare. Around 9, Bodhi meandered down, wearing his football jacket, snatched a bacon strip from the stove, and inquired if Wyatt would bring the cornhole boards once more, as he and Wyatt typically engaged in games prior to our meal. "I believe so," I informed my son, which provoked a tightening sensation in my chest, for Bodhi cherished Wyatt. He referred to him as Uncle Wyatt. No day could avoid shattering my son's faith in trusted individuals, and this realization nearly made me question the entire plan. Nearly. Gemma's parents arrived first, around 11, Bennett bearing 2 pies from Pauline's favored bakery on Hickson Pike, both warm and comfortable as they'd always been with me. Bennett shook my hand, expressed optimism about the Vols this year if defense remained strong, and I reciprocated, all while knowing that within a few hours, I would reveal video evidence of his daughter's affair on the big screen in my living room to this kind, trusting man. My mother, Deborah, followed next, 71 years old and as sharp as ever, quickly claiming a corner of the kitchen to help with the rolls, fussing over Bodhi's growth spurt, questioning my fatigue twice since mothers often sense something amiss even when they can't identify it. At noon, Wyatt and Sloane parked their vehicle in the driveway. From my vantage point behind the window, I observed Wyatt exit his truck, balancing cornhole boards under one arm and a case of his signature IPA beer, sharing amusing banter with Sloane as they trekked towards the house. The sight of him was much like it had been countless times before at my residence, effortless, comfortable, devoid of any burdens. I welcomed them before knocking was necessary, and we exchanged our familiar hybrid greeting that has persisted since our teenage years. "Happy Thanksgiving, brother," he said, the word brother brushing against my emotional fortitude which I had carefully built over 6 days. I managed to maintain composure. I reciprocated his salutation. I removed the beer from his grasp and stored it in the refrigerator myself. Mealtime unfolded as usual, with its boisterous warmth and cluttered chaos, an excess of dishes and scarcity of counter space. Pauline orchestrated the kitchen commotion, while Bennett and I extended the table for 9 guests, with Bodhi arranging cutlery and plates due to Gemma's meticulous training. Sloane entered bearing a perfectly toasted marshmallow-topped sweet potato casserole, bestowing upon me her habitual affectionate embrace at the door. A hug that spoke volumes, yet I found myself glancing over her shoulder and taking a moment to breathe, for I could not shake off the recurring thought. In a few hours, this woman's life would disintegrate, all unjustly. We gathered around the table to dine shortly after 2 o'clock. At the table, Bennett offered grace, his customary modest prayer of thanks for family, health, and another year shared, while I sat, head lowered yet eyes unveiled, observing Gemma chuckle at Pauline's jest, noting Wyatt attempting to grab the cranberry sauce. In my thoughts, I realized, this dinner marks the final meal these individuals partake in, as the people everyone here perceives them to be. The meal itself was ordinary, seemingly uneventful. Bodhi regaled us with an extended tale about a chemistry experiment that almost triggered the school's fire alarm. We debated cheerfully over a Titans game from 2 weeks past. Deborah inquired after Sloane's status at Erlanger, and Sloane discussed the latest pediatric wing they had inaugurated. Gemma and Wyatt sat 2 seats apart at their usual positions during family events, maintaining distance with an air of carefulness, and it dawned on me then, as an observer with fresh perspective, that this deliberate space between them had likely been a habit for months, a daily act of propriety that they no longer needed to consciously maintain due to practice. Following the meal, while the women began clearing dishes and desserts emerged, I performed my customary routine. I instructed everyone to retire to the living room, assuring them I would handle coffee duties, mentioning that the dog show was about to start if anyone wished to watch before indulging in dessert. This was Pauline's annual signal to settle into the recliner and switch on the television. The setup for the televised event had been prepared the night prior, with the laptop connected and a hidden file labeled "Coffee" on the desktop ready to go, as I found my dark sense of humor persisted even in the most challenging times of one's life. Everyone convened in the living room, Bennett and Pauline on the sofa, Deborah seated in an armchair, legs crossed casually by the TV stand as he had done since childhood, Sloane coiled up at the other end of the couch, Wyatt near the fireplace with a coffee mug in hand, and Gemma entering last, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. I, standing beside the television, clutched the remote firmly and announced serenely, "Prior to the dog show, I'd like to share something with all of you. It won't take much time." Unsurprisingly, no one found it unusual, as I had previously displayed family vacation slideshows, sports highlights, and drone footage from work sites that left everyone awestruck at dinner gatherings last year. I pressed the remote, activating the screen. Commencing with a timeline graph, stark white text on an inky black background, I marked February. The room was still engaged in conversation, half attentive, typical when they expect to watch something of moderate interest and insignificance. The initial photograph displayed from Garrison's records showed a hotel receipt, Reed House, dated in February, charged on a card not linked to mine or Gemma's joint account, but rather one Wyatt seemingly maintained for business expenses. I noticed peripherally Gemma's face transform, losing color in mere seconds. Wyatt paused midway while lifting his coffee mug. "Rowan, what's this?" Gemma asked, her voice trembling at the edges, and I remained silent, allowing the slideshow to continue. The subsequent slide held a text message, with Wyatt's name as sender, dated in March. "Can't stop thinking about last night." Pauline turned her gaze towards her daughter, confusion written on her face, followed by the dawning of understanding. Bennett put down his coffee gradually, the methodical movement characteristic of someone whose body comprehends before the mind does. The first video clip then started to play, lasting 10 seconds, featuring the renovated hotel room I had worked on with my own team. In the tranquil home, where silence was absolute save for one noise, Gemma's distinct voice echoed. "Shut it off," Wyatt ordered, his voice quivering, rushing towards the remote in my grip. Yet I retreated, steady as a rock, just as I'd maintained my composure on a construction site when a contractor attempted to evade responsibilities. "We aren't finished," I stated. The second video played, followed by the third. I had designed the slideshow to traverse the entire 9-month timeline, each piece of evidence accumulating upon the last, with text about persevering through the holidays, becoming visible precisely when Sloane made a sound that would haunt me forever, a choked gasp, as if the very air from her lungs had been forcefully extracted. She looked at Wyatt, and he stared at the floor. Deborah, my mom, turned completely pale, her palm pressed firmly against her heart. 16-year-old boy lay motionless on the floor, his gaze alternating between the screen and his mother, as his comprehension of his family crumbled live on the same TV he once played video games on. The presentation concluded with a final slide, plain white text. 9 months, 41 documented incidents, February to November, before the screen flickered off. I placed the remote on the mantelpiece. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the distant cooling of the turkey fryer in the backyard. Gemma wept heavily, her cries reaching for Bodhi, who recoiled at her touch, shattering something within me despite my rage. Wyatt stood near the fireplace, a man who seemed to have just witnessed his life explode before those whose regard he truly valued. Gradually rising from the sofa, Sloane approached Wyatt in a measured pace, striking him forcefully across the face with a volume that echoed like a gunshot within the room. 41 times, she retorted, her voice quivering yet audible. 41 times you returned and allowed me to prepare dinner for you. Afterward, Bennett emerged from his seat, moving towards the distraught Sloane crumpled on the sofa's armrest, revealing a countenance I had never witnessed from the man I had known and admired for 16 years. It wasn't fury, but an overwhelming sadness that seemed more devastating than anger. "For how long have you been hiding this, Gemma?" he inquired gently, his voice hushed yet impactful enough to resonate far beyond any shouting ever could. Gemma pleaded, but Bennett merely shook his head and moved away from her, heading towards where I was standing and placing a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, boy," he murmured. In that instant, as chaos unfolded around us, I believe it was the first time since viewing that video 6 days prior that I allowed myself to truly experience something other than relentless determination. I felt sorrow, raw, straightforward sorrow, for the marriage I believed in, for the unbreakable friendship, for the dinner table at home that would no longer be the effortless, uncomplicated sanctuary it had been just an hour earlier. Deborah, my mother, who seldom cries, displayed tears streaming down her face, but her voice remained strong when she spoke. "Wyatt Caldwell," she stated, "you've sat at this table for 14 years, 14 Thanksgivings, and you did this to my son and to that woman." She gestured towards Sloane in his own home. Wyatt remained silent. In the silence, Gemma attempted again, turning towards me instead of touching. "Can we discuss this privately, Rowan? It's not appropriate to air our issues in front of everyone like this." After her plea, I responded for the first time since the presentation began. "You didn't consider privacy for 9 months, I said. You neglected me, Bodhi, Sloane, and all these people for 9 months. Privacy became important to you only when you were caught." Though my voice remained calm throughout the afternoon, it was the quietness that left a profound impact, as tranquility often carries a deeper cut than anger could ever make. Sloane collected her belongings, her hands trembling, and glanced at me before departing. She thanked me softly only for herself, as I needed to learn. "I'm regretful it unfolded here, but I had to know." Wyatt trailed after her, calling her name, and she never looked back, instead taking the passenger seat in his truck and gazing straight ahead as he pulled out of your driveway, an act that proved to be our final goodbye. The remainder of that afternoon was filled with its own kind of disheartening stillness. Pauline led Gemma into the guest room for conversation or tears, or perhaps both. Bennett stayed with me on the back porch for a prolonged period, saying little, merely sitting beside me in the chilly November air as the uneaten turkey remained untouched inside. My mother took Bodhi out for a drive, only the two of them, since she said the boy required fresh air and space over staying indoors in a house that seemed like a crime scene. On that porch I sat beside my father-in-law, a man whose integrity, as far as his granddaughter was concerned, seemed shattered that very day. At some point he remarked, "For 3 decades I designed heating and cooling systems, Rowan. You understand what I discovered. A system deteriorates gradually, then it collapses entirely. It appears you witnessed the gradual phase before anyone else did." There was no response from me. I merely nodded in agreement as his words rang true. In the ensuing weeks, the cold mechanical workings of an ending took over, much like they always do once the emotional turmoil subsides. Gemma departed within 10 days to a humble abode nearby Northgate. for despite my name on the mortgage and my own hands contributing to half of the house's renovations, I had no desire to be the one who abandoned the home. Time divided body between us, a lengthy and agonizing compromise for a 16-year-old boy grappling with how to confront his mother yet depend on her, a bond that endures regardless of parental actions. Sloane's divorce with Wyatt progressed more swiftly than ours. She filed within the month. Rumor had it that she retained the house, and Wyatt shifted to a corporate apartment in the city, resulting in the loss of two major insurance clients within the year, men who were my friends initially, and when news circulated in specific Chattanooga circles, opted against associating with a man who'd betray his oldest companion in such a way. I can't feign that those months following Thanksgiving weren't tough. Nights found me sitting solitary in that house following Body's departure for his grandmother's apartment for a week, surrounded by a kitchen I had redesigned with Gemma's suggestions, a living room linked to the worst afternoon of my life through the television, and I pondered if I had made the correct decision, carrying it out as I did, in front of everyone instead of silently, privately as Gemma had initially pleaded. However, the thought would return to me of that text message. We simply need to endure the holidays, which reminded me they were employing my mother's stuffing and my son's football highlights as camouflage for another month of deceit, reinstating the uncertainty in me. Body was the one who suffered the most, naturally. There was a period approximately 2 months long where he barely interacted with either of us, where his grades declined, where I would find him sitting in the garage on certain nights, seemingly gazing at nothing. After enrolling him with a therapist specializing in teenagers from divided families, situated near Hamilton Place, he gradually returned to his normal self. Currently a junior, he's putting in effort and considering engineering as a potential field of study. Our relationship has evolved more smoothly than I anticipated, mainly due to my avoidance of criticizing his mother, even during the most difficult times. He needed space to love her and be angry with her simultaneously, which I attempted to provide. Approximately 8 months following that Thanksgiving, Gemma and I officially divorced. Compared to many similar situations, our divorce was amicable. Despite having the legal advantage due to Garrison's case and the public nature of our split, I chose not to financially burden her. In the aftermath of a 16-year-long union, I delegated the intricate calculations to my lawyers, diverting my remaining vitality towards sustaining Bodhi. Occasionally, Gemma attempted to reach out to me during those months, not with the intention of reconciling, but perhaps to comprehend why I had acted as I did. I responded fully only once. I confided in her that I'd spent 6 days constructing my argument with the same meticulousness and strategy I'd applied throughout my life, because I am that kind of person, and I refused to let the most devastating event in my life transform me into someone who acted impulsively. She had no reply to that. I suspect there wasn't one to make. As for Wyatt, our communication ceased since that afternoon, and I don't anticipate resuming it ever again. News travels swiftly in a city like Chattanooga. Though he is scattered, and based on what I've gathered, still exists, he continues to peddle insurance, rebuilding his clientele that suffered a significant blow, residing alone in an apartment on Gun Barrel Road. From what my shared acquaintances report, Sloane relocated to Knoxville approximately a year afterwards, aiming to be near her sister. She supposedly has since made a fresh start and seems to be thriving, the sole aspect of this entire tale that provides any comfort when I reflect upon it. Sloane, as my mutual friends inform me, did not merit the ordeal she experienced, and if I could alter one thing about the past, it would be finding a way to secretly alert her before Thanksgiving, rather than allowing her to learn about it in the same harsh manner everyone else did. This is the burden of guilt that I still bear, should I speak truthfully with you. Occasionally, people who have heard this story ask me if I regret performing it the way I did. The slideshow, the large screen, and the crowd of individuals who cherished us both. The question you asked has been pondered more deeply than most things in my life, and the response that consistently surfaces is this: I didn't act out of revenge, though it may seem so to an outside observer. Instead, my actions stemmed from a 9-month ordeal during which 2 individuals were perpetrating a deception before everyone dear to me. I refused to let their charade persist for another day, especially not on the pretense of a harmonious family Thanksgiving celebration while they discreetly plotted their departure under their own conditions. If I had confronted Gemma privately in the kitchen that first night, She would have had ample time to concoct a tale, to make it more palatable, to control the narrative when caught. By carrying out my actions as I did, I stripped away all possibilities for manipulation. Once the truth was displayed on the screen for her parents to see, there was no room for negotiation. My business is thriving now more than ever. Signed the downtown office contract last month and leased a second warehouse near East Ridge due to continuous work. Body and I now share weekly dinners, occasionally joined by my mother, and have initiated a tradition of grilling outside even in cold weather as the silence in our house resonates with me too. A small group, me, Body, my mother, Bennett, and Pauline, celebrated Thanksgiving this past year, the first since, with an air of solemnity. Despite their daughter's actions, they never altered their treatment towards me, with Bennett still addressing me as his son. We chose to forgo the dog show that Thanksgiving, avoiding any mention of it, though I believe we all felt a need for time before reviving those traditions again. I often reflect on that fateful night, stationed in my office with the computer screen illuminating the same 11 minutes of footage that marked an end and a beginning. I contemplate the near choices I could have made, such as shouting, fleeing without saying a word, or challenging Wyatt in some dramatic parking lot confrontation like in movies. However, I also acknowledge that the me who devised a measured, patient 6-day strategy is the version of myself I'm most proud of, even on nights when things seem toughest. Because here's what I've realized, a lesson I hope anyone watching this with their own screen full of similar footage will grasp. You don't need to shout to make yourself heard, and you don't have to sacrifice yourself to ensure the truth is told. Sometimes, the most potent action is maintaining composure, collecting all required pieces, and allowing the truth to resound in a space filled with people who deserve to hear it. My professional journey hinged upon the belief that meticulous work ensures stability, a principle that transcends mere structures. Indeed, I find this truth extends beyond architecture.